Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to uncover why our memories are, well, not exactly the perfectly reliable recorders we often think they are. We're diving straight into the architecture of the human mind to figure out exactly why it sometimes feels like your memory has a complete mind of its own.
I mean, have you ever experienced this highly relatable glitch in your mental operating system? You march right into the kitchen with total purpose, look around, and suddenly you have absolutely no idea what you went in there to get. It's so frustrating, right? But it turns out it's actually a perfectly normal feature of our biology.
Okay, let's really dive into this fascinating concept. It reveals that human memory functions way less like a computer's hard drive, perfectly saving and retrieving video files, and a lot more like a reconstructive editor. Every single time we remember something, we're actually piecing together tiny fragments, which basically means our memories are entirely subjective. Here's what we'll be covering in this explainer today. First, we'll look at the fallibility of memory. Then we'll break down the sins of omission, followed by the sins of commission. After that, we'll single out the sin of persistence, and finally, we'll go over how you can actually overcome these everyday memory lapses.
So, part one, the fallibility of memory, based on Daniel Schachter's 2001 framework.
To kick things off, psychologist Daniel Schachter provided a really groundbreaking framework that proves human memory doesn't just fail randomly. It actually fails in very specific, highly predictable ways. He famously called these the 7 sins of memory. Basically, these 7 bugs in our mental software are split into 2 main architectural categories. You've got forgetting information, and you've got distorting it. The sins of omission on the left represent a total failure to bring up an idea or fact. And then on the right, the sins of commission happen when a memory is definitely there, but it's fundamentally incorrect or unwanted. Moving on to section 2, sins of omission, forgetting or when memory completely fails to bring up an idea. So these omission sins are all about those frustrating failures to recall what we actually want to remember. These are those everyday moments where information just slips right through the cracks. The very first sin here is transience. This is the totally natural fading or weakening of our episodic memory as time goes on. As we age, or honestly just due to interference from a lifetime of other memories piling up, our ability to retain the specific details of past experiences naturally deteriorates. And to put that into perspective, this stat brilliantly illustrates how transience works in real life. It shows that even culturally massive moments fade and warp as the years go by. Researchers actually studied undergrads right after the O.J. Simpson trial verdict, and then they checked back with those same students 3 years later. Even though it was a huge, intense event, fewer than 30% of them recalled it accurately, and nearly half had major glaring errors in their memory. Wild, right? Next up is another incredibly familiar glitch, absent-mindedness. This happens when our brain simply fails to properly register details just because we're distracted. It's essentially a failure right at the interface of attention and memory. Think about it. If you aren't paying sufficient attention when an event happens, like during that crucial encoding phase, your brain literally won't have the data stored away to retrieve later. And hey, this is the exact reason why you might casually walk out of your house without your keys. Your brain never encoded where you put them down because, well, you weren't paying attention. The exact same thing happens when you're introduced to someone and forget their name, literally 3 seconds later. You heard the name, sure, but your focus was somewhere else, so the memory never fully formed. The third sin of omission is blocking. This one occurs when another memory actively interferes with the specific one we are desperately searching for. The information is definitely in your brain, it's been encoded, it's stored, but you are temporarily blocked from reaching it. It's the primary mechanism behind that incredibly frustrating tip-of-the-tongue phenomenon. You know exactly what word you want to say, but you simply cannot retrieve it because of a mental roadblock. Your brain is trying so hard to fetch the target word, but other similar sounding or related words are just getting in the way, actively suppressing the exact one you need. All right, let's move to section 3. Sins of commission, distortion. This is when memory brings up completely fabricated ideas. Now we're looking at some slightly higher stakes errors. This is where our memory actively hands us incorrect or distorted information. Your brain gives you an answer, but the answer is just wrong. A classic example here is misattribution. This occurs when you remember an event accurately, but you get the source totally, completely wrong. Like maybe you think you witnessed a suspect at a crime scene, when in reality, you just saw that person on a TV program. You're correctly recalling a face or a fact, but your brain completely misfiles where you originally picked up that information. Then there's suggestibility. This is a pretty critical flaw where our memories can be entirely altered or even completely fabricated by leading questions or external prompts. This actually happens a lot during eyewitness testimonies. When someone else introduces false information or they ask a question in a highly specific way, our reconstructive memory can actually weave that false detail right into our genuine recollection.
And this suggestibility feeds directly into broader cognitive biases, just like the misinformation effect. It shows how easily our memory can become distorted simply by receiving misleading information after an event has already taken place.
For instance, let's say a witness saw a yellow car. Just by being asked a leading question later about a blue car, that witness can permanently overwrite their accurate memory with the suggested false detail. Their brain literally edits the scene, and from that point forward, they will genuinely, firmly believe they saw a blue car.
The sixth sin is bias. This is where our present emotional state, our attitudes, or our current worldview literally edits the content of our past memories to match how we feel today. So if you're feeling extremely happy today, you are much more likely to look back on your childhood with fondness, emphasizing all the positive moments while completely filtering out the negative ones.
Section 4. The sin of persistence. The inability to forget. Now we reach a very unique sin of commission. This one doesn't deal with distortion or fading, but with a sometimes painful inability to let go. While the other sins involve forgetting or misremembering, this sin is about remembering entirely too well. Persistence is the unwanted, chronic, and intrusive recall of memories we'd much prefer to forget. This ranges from, say, slightly embarrassing office blunders all the way up to severe trauma, like PTSD. While remembering danger is an evolutionary necessity that keeps us safe, a malfunctioning persistence of memory can really deeply impact a person's mental health.
And finally, Section 5, Overcoming Memory Lapses, and how we can go about patching the glitches in our cognitive operating system.
So, we know the mental software is flawed, but how can we actually implement practical patches to mitigate these everyday memory failures? Fortunately, cognitive psychology doesn't just diagnose the problem, it gives us clear, actionable solutions. By employing strategies like elaboration, say actively adding details when you meet someone new, or practicing mindfulness to stay present, we can drastically reduce our daily mental lapses. When you elaborate on something, you force your brain to form much stronger neurological pathways for that memory. Let's look at a practical example. To beat absent-mindedness, try using event-based cues rather than time-based ones. Instead of saying you'll take your medication at exactly 10 p.m., tell yourself you'll take it immediately after brushing your teeth. Our brains are just so much better at associating a new task with an established physical habit than they are at arbitrary timekeeping. Since we now know our memories are really just subjective reconstructions, I'm going to leave you with this thought to ponder the very next time you feel absolutely certain about a past event. Ask yourself, is this exactly how it happened? Or is it just the story your brain decided to reconstruct for you today? Thank you so much for exploring the incredible, beautifully flawed architecture of the mind with me in this explainer.